Hey everybody, welcome. It is that time. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Yes and Brand Show. This is our 12th episode. I'm very excited. I am Kathy Klotz-Guest. I'm the author of Stop Boring Me, How to Create Kick-Ass Marketing Content, Products, and Ideas Through the Power of Improv, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. World's longest title. And with me today, I'm super excited because this is actually, of all the episodes we've done, my first guest. And it's Mike Ganino. Mike Ganino, everybody, in the house.
Hey.
He's a smarty. He is a public speaker. He talks about culture. He's like me. He's an improviser. So this is going to be fun. So we're going to have a great old time. I'm so excited you're here. If you're here, and I know people rotate in and out. Hey, everybody, I see we got a couple people. Go ahead, because we are using Be Live. We are pumping it through to Facebook. So feel free to write a question, a comment, whatever. That way we know who's here. And if we like your comment, I'll post it. All that good stuff. Sound good?
Love
Yay!
it.
Welcome, Mike Ganino. How the hell are ya?
I'm so good. I didn't know that I was like the first official guest. I would have tried to get my hair a little bit taller.
I know. Mike has the best hair. I love his hair. I think it's fantastic. And it's his personality because, just knowing Mike, he's just so open and effusive and loving life. And I love it. I love your hair. And I think it's your trademark.
You know what? I think it's a super fun thing. And it's almost always in the, when I speak or I do a workshop, it's always the thing that people comment on. It's like, oh, the guy with the big hair. We liked that. So whenever I go to get my hair cut, though, there's a serious level of anxiety because I'm like, This is like, I need to get it insured or something like Taylor Swift's legs. It's like, I don't know, my moneymaker.
Like, not the hair. Some people's the face. Mike's like, not the hair. Don't touch the hair.
No, the face is smudged and messy and beaten up, but the hair needs to stay on point.
Exactly. It's like Lloyd's of London. It's like, it's like, could we insure Mike Ganino's hair? Maybe. But it looks so gosh darn good. So anyway, I like it. Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because we're both culture vultures in a way. We both look at culture and we're both improvisers. And you and I have talked a lot about this topic offline. And I just think it's time. We talk about innovation in Silicon Valley. We talk about innovation. We talk about innovating products and services and all these other things, but we forget to talk about the most important thing in a company, which is really culture.
Yeah.
And culture is no accident. It's really strategy. And how do we design a culture that works for people? And you and I both talked about this. It's like, we put so much emphasis on customers, and customers are important. But if we're not treating our employees right, we're not going to have customers. So, we have to talk about the employee experience. And so I wanted to start there, and I wanted to, sort of weave in improv threads because improv, nobody calls me and says, hey, Kathy, my improv is broken. Could you come over and wear some plumber pants and fix my improv?
Yeah.
Sure, we're not improv rich. No, and it really isn't. But I think as I hope through this conversation, we'll have a really robust kind of time sort of unpacking how sort of principles of improv can really sort of help people think through a culture and how to apply it to creating a better employee experience. So with that, I'm going to let you launch into the opening salvo, my friend. What's on your mind today about the employee experience and culture? What's on Mike Ganino's mind?
What is on my mind? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with yogurt though. This is making me hungry. Someone's posting about yogurt, so now that's on my mind.
Oh my goodness.
So here's the deal. Here's what I think. I think that we for so long have gotten so used to saying there's an employee experience and there's a customer experience, and I actually think that's complete crap. There's one experience with how people interact with your business, with your leadership, with your team, and I think we're seeing more and more that there's this trend that it's the same thing. Like if I feel yucky about your brand as a consumer, I'm going to feel yucky as an employee. Because, way back when you could go on and say hey, when you work inside of the company, you don't have access to Glassdoor or social. People who know you don't know where you work. But I don't know. Hopefully they're not a sponsor of yours. But if I was working, I have a friend who works at Uber, and I know that there's some concern by people inside of Uber of hey, what is this doing to my career? And so that disconnect between customer experience and employee experience is like no longer. It's just one, like how we feel about you. And so I've been doing a lot of work recently around brand experience, which is really all of it.
Yeah. So true. And I love that you use this example of Uber, because Uber is sort of the poster child lately for bad behavior. You know what I mean? It's sort of like a culture that's, I think, I really believe it's Darwinian. If you have a crappy culture, you should implode, because it will leak out. You're right. There is no sound wall. It will leak out to customers. There isn't. And one of the things that's really, you said something interesting, is that I do think sometimes people who do behave appropriately and are good employees, they're stuck in a very untenable situation of having to defend a brand. I mean, can you imagine an Uber employee that is the driver and they're doing everything right and they're providing good service, and people are saying how horrible because of the culture and the way they treat it and all these things, and you're having to defend, which you shouldn't have to be in this situation. As an employee brand champion, you either defend that, or you say, you know what, I can't defend it because it's untenable. And there's a point at which an employee should not have to be sort of the lone wolf out there trying to defend the undefendable. You know?
I think, yeah, and I think that then has to impact how I feel when I come to work every day. Like if I feel at night like I'm going to a happy hour and I'm meeting up with friends, they're like, oh, we saw about you in the news. Like, what's going on over there? If I was a man. Let's get creative. Let's go really wild. If I was a man and I worked at Uber, I would feel like I needed to defend the fact that I didn't say horrible misogynistic thing about women. Like there's a challenge there to say that. And that has to impact you when you come to work every day. It has to impact the way that you work with other people, that you're creative, that you're collaborating, that you're trying to do all of this. All the things that we try to do within improvisation to co-create and have trust, this has to impact it.
Yeah. No doubt. And that's really it. Culture is co-created.
Yeah.
And that's such a point. You know, that maybe don't know anything about improv. One of the things that I've tried to do, and I think you have too, and a lot of us out there that have that background, it's, you know, improv really isn't about being fundamentally an act of co-creating with other people. That's really the focus of what. And sure, it can be fun. It can be really understanding that culture is, we abide by a set of how things, culture is very much, it can be established at the top, but we all have to buy into it. Employees have to buy into it, and they become the co-creators of this culture. And if you can't defend a culture, your employees to provide the best service, it puts them in a very strange, you know, situation, as well as your customer. Again, I'm old school about this stuff, and you probably are too. I think, you know, and I had this long conversation at South by about Fiverr. I think a culture that cannot treat people well, its own employees, really should, it's Darwinian, should implode. I think it makes room in the market for the cultures that have great cultures who are going to be better at treating customers, and it's survival of the fittest. And it starts, I think, with culture.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at some point, if everyone who's coming to work every day, if you have an organization of 200 people or 5,000 people or 20 people, if everyone who comes to work every day is thinking, this sucks, this is horrible, what are we going to do? There's no way that can last very long. Or there's no way that can last very long without a lot of money. You've got to infuse a lot of investor cash to keep hiring hot, talented people to bring creativity, to bring better service, when in reality, all of that existed. You just couldn't tap into it because people were so damn scared or frustrated or angry at work every day. And it's like, so let's hire someone. And you see this all the time, I'm sure, in your work. Oh, we need a creative person to come in. And it's like, well, you've got a lot of creative people. No, they're not. They don't get it. And it's like, well, no, you don't know how to tap into it.
Yes. You know, that's really such an important point. When a company talks like that about their, is a really big red flag for me. It means you have not invested in developing your employees. And if you have to rely on somebody from the outside, now, like you, I'll come in and I'll facilitate, but if you ignore the fact that you've got talent all around you, and this is co-created, and they have an emotional investment in creating the kind of work you do every day, and that they're responsible, man, you don't really respect that. And I think to my beginning of the end, But boy, that to me is like a big red flag you cannot ignore. Because that just, if you don't trust your employees, for the love of God, what are you doing there? Like what, like, that to me just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, it's this idea of like creativity or great service is this like magical thing that certain people have. And Right. Like, ooh, you got the creative spirit in you, girl. Like you've got it inside of you. And it's just so not, I mean, you do, let's be honest, but, it's just not the way it works. Like it's not what happens. And there's this whole, it was so funny. I was leading like a brainstorming session recently and I had people work alone first.
Yeah. And
they were like, well, that's not brainstorming. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't mean to break the commandments of brainstorming, but I was,
you will by the brainstorming God.
Right. I'm being smited. It's so bad. It was like, take out the scroll and show me. But the issue I think so often in like that creative use, and we were just brainstorming like employee life cycle topics. We weren't even brainstorming like consumer creativity. We were just saying, what are some things we could do to boost the employee experience here? And what's so interesting is people automatically think brainstorming needs to be like on a board, everyone yelling ideas, running around. And it's like, no, we're going to start with you coming up with your best ideas on paper. So we're going to do some like, divergent thinking, and then we're going to put them together and see what comes out. Then we're going to whittle them down. And we ended up with a ton of better ideas because it's tapping into the way that everyone can be creative versus in a room of 20 people. If I said, who has creative ideas? 2 people would raise their hand because everyone else says, I'm just like an HR person. I'm not creative.
Yeah. Such a great point. And it does sort of, it's a little bit divergent, but it fits in the larger kind of, rubric of culture. I think you're so right. I think there are introverts and they are, the broom dominate brainstorming. And you're right. And research is really clear. Research is super clear that when people go and brainstorm ideas separately and then come together, those ideas are stronger.
Yeah.
Because now somebody has already done some individual thinking and they're less likely to fall in. I've already thought about it on my own. I have some ideas that I'm bringing to the table, and the research is actually really clear. Your brainstorming is better that way. You're absolutely right. And I think it's sort of, most people aren't guided through those kinds of things, but that just tells you, again, when we talk about culture, I think culture can be dominated by those louder voices. And I still believe culture is set top down, like the founders are such a big part of creating the culture. But this is where it gets interesting, Mike. I also think culture is bottoms up because those people also have to feed into it. And I don't think we don't talk about that enough. We talk about top down culture, super important. Super, super important. I'm not going to argue that. I've seen it. And if the founders are jackasses, the culture is shit. But I do think that we forget sometimes that the everyday culture is lived and practiced and breathed by the employees. So what is their role? And do they feel like they have a role in culture? And are we approaching culture right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think those are all the right questions. I teach this like pyramid thing about, I need to like get a little drawing of it and be like, here's my drawing, everybody. Like pull it out of my pocket and be like, ta-da.
You gotta have a laser pointer though. You gotta be like, and here's my little drawing.
I think so. Or maybe I'll get like building blocks and I can like Lego it for you. Like here's step 1. But whenever I talk about like crafting the employee experience, which is ultimately like the culture is the employee experience. That's what your culture ends up being. I always talk about like at first you have to kind of, before we do anything, you have to really manage yourself. And it goes so along with the work that we do as improvisers and in applied improvisation to say the building block of this pyramid towards the employee experience at the top is managing ourselves. So getting straight in our own head of like, how do I show up? What does that look like? What are my actions? What are my beliefs? And how do those do things? I think then as an organization, you're responsible for developing systems that aim you towards what you want. And then the third step finally is the building relationships, which is where the employees ultimately come in. I think they come in the building systems too, because I think you can say, hey, what's going on? It doesn't look like this is working, and kind of say, what's a human-centered design approach? I was just talking with an HR group, and they were talking about how they come up with all these policies. And I said, great, so who's involved in those policy creations? And there were no employees. And I said, my advice to you is that you get like a committee that sits down and says, okay, what are we trying to do with this policy? Let's generate some ideas about how we could get there and put it together. Because when you then get people invested, they say, wait a second, I came up with this. Let's go make it happen. And I think if you don't stop and say, hey, we're going to do this to the culture, it's going to impact people like you, Kathy. How do you think we should communicate it to people like you, and what are we missing? If you can't do that, you're shooting the culture in the foot, and you're creating culture. That's one of the misnomers, the mistakes I hear a lot is, yeah, we'd like to start creating our culture. And it's like, no, you got one. You just don't know what it is yet. And it might be good. It might just be like, wow, it's working. The village is self-sustaining. Or it might be horrible. But either way, there's something that's happening. And so I think employees are the critical part of it, because as an owner, as a manager, as a founder, as a team leader, you can manage yourself and you can start to develop systems. But in that third tier, it's all about building the relationships and the connective tissue, and then seeing if that can create, I call it the sizzle at the top, seeing if that could create the sizzle on your team to get you that group genius, that group think that you want.
Yeah, and I have so much interesting, especially with big companies. We see, I see a lot of acquisitions, and I've dealt with big tech companies, Mike, that will acquire other companies, and now they're stuck with merging different cultures. And here's what's really interesting: work with a really large tech company, and let's just say who it is, and they acquired this company. Got me in to sort of help with kind of onboarding and rethinking onboarding. And here's what was really, they have a separate kind of story and kind of then send it down the pipe to the employee. Kathy, what do you think of our new company story and culture? I said, it doesn't matter what I think. What do you think? And they said, it's horrible. We were never asked. It was shoved in our faces. And employees aren't buying into the company. They are the most important advocates you need on board. You'd be crafting a story that you think the customers want, but you have forgotten to get the most important emotionally invested people in the employees. And it was fascinating to me. Like, they had not done their homework. Feed into the process from both company. I think so. It blew my mind. You know,
it's so interesting because I think there's so many companies that take that approach of like, let's draft our values so we can tell them to customers.
Yeah.
And I think what falls short there is, if that's the case, it doesn't matter what you draft. Your customers are going to know your values by the way they're being treated by your employees, right? And we're seeing such an interesting thing happen where stated values versus what's happened. So let's talk about Volkswagen last year with the emissions issue. So one of their values was around, I think you might have even shared like an image or something at one point of like, we really value transparency, or like adding good things to the world. So why does it happen then? Because you had a value. Why did it happen? Well, it happened because there was insane pressure inside of that organization to produce a specific result and hit a specific financial target. So when you make that the most important thing, that is what people will deliver. And then to be surprised when they actually deliver what you told them was most important is really foolish.
What a disconnect. It's so interesting. And I appreciate it too. It's like that disconnect is sort of palpable. It makes me laugh because anybody can have placards and mugs and t-shirts. We're the best and we value people, and we're, people. You know, and I laugh and I always remind people, like, back in the day, Enron, when you went into the lobby at Enron, there was a big placard. We value integrity and honesty and all these things. And that placard sat in the Enron, people. Hello. So it's very easy to just spew these mug quotations and quotables and, you know, Adams, made Dilbert famous for all these ridiculous things, but it's, it's lacking a social proof, and it's so easy to do. And I think people are jaded when they hear culture, because I think when I talk to employees that work at big companies, and I don't blame them, it's not their fault. I think the way culture has been treated as an after the fact. We're going to create culture. Now we're going to try to manage culture when they long. I think employees are jaded because they believe that it's important. And
Well, it's the idea of like, it's that whole thing that you were saying of like, we're going to go create something. It's like, no, something actually exists. So if you don't like what it is, how can you evolve it? It's the same thing when I talk about customer service with places and they talk about Yelp and their Yelp reviews. And it's like, well, that existed in some way. So what can you do to then evolve that? Because it's not about shutting down the business and saying, how do we redesign it all and open up on Monday as a new business? It's saying, we've got something here. And this is what I love. One of the things I love about improv is really about creating something from everything and creating something from anything. I actually disagree with the statement of creating something from nothing, because that's not true. When you and I do a scene together, we're not starting with nothing. You're there, I'm there. There's some kind of energy. I'm looking at your body. I'm watching the way you're standing. I'm listening to your vocal inflection. I'm trying to say what's deeper than that. And you're doing the same with me. So we're not creating from nothing. We're creating from anything, and we're creating from everything. And I think that when companies sit down to say, let's create culture, they're saying like, here we are. We've got a blank slate. Let's start writing. And that's not the truth. You have something. And you just want to evolve it, And I think that's where employees get turned off, like you said.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Because I believe that with all my heart and soul, that what it really is about is we're creating something together from individual pieces that maybe didn't exist, but for the fact that we still brought our individual ideas to the table. We brought who we were to the table, something, right? But what we did is we shaped collaboratively from what we individually brought. And then we made it better by yes-anding and just upping it further and fleshing it out from there. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's such a really powerful way to look at it. Because everybody has a culture. Even if you ignore a culture, you have a culture. You may have a shitty culture, but you have a culture.
Yeah.
And somebody likes it.
And I think the first step in that is always like when I do my little pyramid, which again, I went like, here it is. When you do the little pyramid exercise, the very first thing you do before you even start working on it is evaluate where you actually are. Let's just be honest about what we're creating from, because if we don't acknowledge that, it's like if we're doing an improv scene and you say something of like, hey, babe, this is the 15th time you've done this to me this month. And I would acknowledge that you are implying that I'm your husband or boyfriend or something close to you, that I'm doing something annoying. And I just say like, I love when I get milk out of the fridge. And it's like, wait a second. Everyone else is around saying, wait a second, something exists and he's ignoring it. And I think that when I work with organizations where they say, we want to be like this and we're here and we're stuck and they want to throw this away. And it's like, no, we need to use that to get where we want. We've got to use everything to get there. So if you want a collaborative environment, we can't throw it away, put some like fun colors on the wall and say, we're now collaborative. We've got to utilize the connective tissue that exists. It's evolution.
I love that. I think sometimes people, improvisers, like, as like fairy dust or spray paint, we're like emotional, like, we are spackle, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to put some pretty color and spackle wall.
Right.
And, I always say that what improv does is it amplifies, it brings to light what's already there. I think to your point, and it's such a great analogy. And I love that you say that, because what we're talking about, folks, is that in improv, you have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. It's like anything else in speaking. If there's something you have to, because the audience is going, oh my God, that scene, somebody just said, I'm gonna break up with you, and that other person is pretending that bomb didn't happen. You can't ignore that emotional bomb in the room, because everybody in the room is going, and so you have to be changed by that somehow. And it's very right. You can't ignore these big pieces. The question that becomes is what people believe is already true and what we know exists in the de facto culture. Say, all right, this is what this is today. How do then we bridge that gap? But acknowledging what is. That is such, and improv is so much a part of acknowledging the obvious.
Yeah.
What did you just turned around when I was talking to you? I saw what you did, honey, that look, Gene, and calling out these little gifts. And I think it's funny that way. We tend to ignore the things that we don't like. But I think marketing's the same way. We want to ignore the things that aren't working, but that's part of how we bridge the gap to get to what we need to be. So we're not culture dust fairies. No, we are improv is a strategic thing. Improv is a very strategic thing, I think.
Well, it's like, and we talked about this of like how improv is not about like, I think when people sometimes look to us and say like, hey, what can you do? It's like, oh, you'll come in and you'll make everyone funny and then they'll be happy and they'll like each other and that's why it works. And it's like, no. The funny is just a way in if we need it. The funny is just a way in. But like, I really don't care if any of your people are laughing or happy or doing anything. What I care about is that they're connecting and they're talking about what actually is happening and they're trying to evolve it. There's that, Ivania Ansant or something. The woman, she's like one of Oprah's like spiritual gurus.
Yes.
She said a thing one time and I use it. Yeah. She said a thing one time and I use it all the time because it's genius. And she said, you got to call a thing to figure out how to get away from it. We got to put it on the table, call a thing, and then we can work on it. But if you can't call a thing, then we're in trouble. So like, if you can't say, hey, our employees do not feel listened to, they are not being listened to, their ideas are not being heard. If you can't say that, then how am I going to help you fix it? You've got to be able to call a thing.
It's true. Folks, if you're joining us, I see we have a couple of people here. Type in your comments if you get questions. Mike and I would love them. So by all means, we love hearing from you. But I know some people watch it after the fact, and that's cool too. I love that you said call a thing. Because that is what it is. I just read a post the other day, Mike, and it was about this company called Asana, A-S-A.
Yeah.
And it's a bunch of ex-Googlers and people like that who are leaving these, and they're leaving, and the primary reason is to start a company with a different kind of culture. So culture becomes a defining characteristic up front. It's not an after the fact, but it's very much a conscientious thing because it is new. We do have existing styles and we come from Google, but let's be conscious that we approach culture, because even though we have things, we do also know that startup, we have a better shot at really being mindful about the kind of culture that will evolve.
Yeah.
So they're doing it in a very conscious way. And that strikes me as very consistent with the rules of improv, which are, all right, how do we yes and what? Can we build something that works for all of us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too to say, and what I think is so cool about Asana, I love them. They're one of my favorite, culture crush, culture crush. I got a crush. # culture crush. The thing I love about that approach is I think somewhere there's probably something saying, how do we build the kind of company? Like, sure, we're going to have a product initially, but I imagine somewhere they're saying, we also know that product is going to evolve and change. So how do we build the kind of company that can solve problems for people in this space, no matter what the problems end up becoming? And I think so many companies are designed to create a solution based on a very specific, this is what we do, versus saying, this is the band of people that we've put together to constantly be solving issues around productivity, no matter what those issues are. Because what if in a few years people aren't using Asana, nobody wants project management, there's something new and hot. Well, then you've got to be able to evolve to that. And I think we're seeing a big battle go on right now with Facebook and and Snapchat, frankly, but really Facebook and advertising, Facebook and work systems, because they've got their new Facebook at Work. And what I think Facebook is doing really well is saying, we've assembled a team of people, maybe through acquisitions, but we've assembled a team of people who can constantly keep creating what needs to be created, because we haven't assigned ourselves as social media. We're a company that helps people connect. And we're able to do that in lots of different ways. And I think what's interesting about Asana is I think they're setting themselves up to be a band of people who can really just solve interesting problems. And I think that's pretty cool.
I think it's really cool. It reminds me a lot of when Zappos got started. What struck me right away was, before they even knew they wanted to sell shoes, he just knew he wanted to create the best customer service company.
Yeah.
Then they backed into the product. So they didn't start with we're going to be a shoe company, we're going to be this company. It was, no, we need to create a culture, the best customer service possible, and hire the best employees to do that. This dinged for spending too much time on the phone in a customer service call. The opposite. So what I loved is that they backed into it. Then after deciding that's the kind of company they wanted to be, they decided what product they wanted to sell, which I think is really fascinating, because it gets this idea of putting culture first. And I think it flipped, you and I are both talking about, which especially in tech is, let's create the solution first. Then let's somehow try to, I don't know, like MacGyver a culture. Yeah. And back in.
Right.
Doesn't, now that I say it out loud, seems really, ass backwards, right?
Isn't it funny? And you see that a lot with these companies where the founder does something really big and cool, goes on to do the next thing and can't do it again. Why? It's not because they're less intelligent or they're stuck. It's because there was something special about the context created in that original company that made great things happen. I do this whenever I'm talking to people who are interviewing like rock stars, like superstars from other companies. I say, do not discount the power of context, because somebody could have done really, really great. They could have been a top salesperson in X, Y, and Z company, but what was around them, because they didn't do it alone. And that's another improvisational thing of like, if you're on stage alone improvising, you're just a storyteller. To actually be doing improvisational theater, you need someone else. Otherwise, you're just an impromptu storyteller. And so I think companies are the same. And I think when we're hiring people, we should stop with this like, oh, they designed the UX at Airbnb, so they're going to design great UX here. And it's like, well, wait a second. I'm pretty sure they didn't do that alone. So what tools did they have? What kind of leadership did they have? What were the amenities around them? What was the team like? Because all of that fires it up.
Mike, you just hit on something so genius. I'm going to repeat it. Honey. I'm going to repeat it. And I totally agree with you. And this conversation, we're ready for those of you who will watch, who are listening in the background. It really is such a big part of improv and before this idea of ensemble, which you and I both know. That thread of ensemble is so important. I do stand-up comedy, and there's a big, shitty, horrible improvisers, because that ability to get out of themselves and to be the focus, but to make somebody else look good, a supporting character, they don't have that. I'm kind of a weird is you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
Or somebody else builds on it. That scene. And the beauty is having, I think, cultures like that. And to your point, and I know you said this before, and I love it. And I know that talk, my friend, because I think culture is an ensemble. And you just hit on it. Context does really, really good at what you do, but in environment, you can't do what you do. You can be really talented, but if you don't have the resource, you can't do what you do. I had this debate yesterday in my improv. to play with people that are similar to them. And I'm like, here's the deal. You need the driver, you need the big character, you need the person who's the sitting cross, come in and just raise the stakes. Everybody having a different style to make that work. And I think the same way, you've got to have you. And I emphasize in a culture, this is a really interesting thing as I'm talking about it. I don't know that we, at least in high tech, we reward the rock stars, but the rock stars can't be rock stars if they don't humble around them.
Yeah.
Tech can be really to building a yeah.
It's so and it's so interesting. I mean, one of the things I think that we're seeing in like HR trend is people starting to move away from like individual performance to really talking about how do we design teams, and then how can we apply those teams in different ways. And what we've seen through a ton of research is that when there was a great team who produced something, when you broke them up, they didn't individually produce greatness again. They needed that environment. And you see that with musicians. You see that with, even performers, singers who it's like they had a great producer and a great manager. They needed that to be successful. I mean, Elton John and his songwriting partner, greatness came from them. Yeah, thank you. And you see that across the board. You see that with teams. I mean, Michael Jordan would have been Michael Jordan without those specific Bulls, the Chicago Bulls, playing with him. It took an entire ensemble to make Michael Jordan the star he was.
Yeah. Well said. No, and I love that idea. And I think that's for those of you that will watch this later, I think it's such a powerful tool because it is a thing that happens in improv and improv groups. And I really believe it really sets the tone for culture of an improv group, the culture of a company. There's no difference. And one of the things that I see a lot, and again, branding and storytelling, I see it across the board, this, especially in tech. We have idolized and we have raised the profile of that rock star founder hero cult status. Then what ends up happening though is that person struggles getting people to follow him or her and building the we because they were so celebrated as an individual rock star. And that can be a really dangerous thing for a company, from a story teacher, all of it, because it's the cult of the lone wolf, and I'm the hero, and people out for themselves. I see this a lot in high tech, and I think it's a good thing that high tech, but I think actually it's a cult. Yeah. I think, and as a company grows, good luck because those rock stars do not bring anything to come on their own. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting, this idea of like, in that case, that person is probably getting used to being told yes a lot. And so, sure. And if anybody knows anything about improv, they know yes and. I think the challenge with the rock star thing is they're just being told yes, period. Mm-hmm. The power in when you and I are doing a scene together, the power comes from my contribution to what you did. And so if there is this rock star thing that happens around a founder or a specific person, at some point, and I have to imagine that's exhausting for them, but at some point nothing is becoming evolutionary because they're just being told yes all the time. You could even see that, talking of rock stars, I feel like there's people who are very big celebrities, Mariah Carey, who people need to say yes and to more often. Because I feel like people are just saying yes, that's wonderful, that's wonderful. And everything I know about great stuff is that it took multiple people.
Yeah. That
it took the yes and. And I think that we forget that we hear yes and we think like improvisers are just positive and wonderful and loving. But it's like, no, we're also laying bricks together and we're building something better than what we each had alone. And when you get to that rock star person who's just being told yes all the time, I don't know. I think that's a failure. Failure is coming.
Failure is coming. No, it's not sustainable. And that's exactly right. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
there's no yes and in that mentality.
No.
And that is very dangerous because you cannot build a scene, you cannot sustain a scene, you cannot sustain a culture on yes alone.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're trying to build a great culture, you're actually not doing anything because you're just creating something around like one person, which is fine if you're a very small company. If you're like 30 people, then yes, have that founder as the lifeblood, the power behind everything. But as you start to get bigger, you're in trouble if that founder needs to be involved in every great decision.
Yeah. Well, it is. And it's sort of point, I think, the cult status of a Steve Jobs is still very out here in Silicon Valley. It's still such an embedded thing. What even Steve Jobs probably would admit to if he were here, Wozniak, without a team of people, there would be no Apple. There would be no Apple. It could, because the brains and the development and the engineering prowess was Wozniak.
Yeah,
a team bringing it to life. And so clearly Jobs played a key role as the salesperson, as the marketing spokesperson, and he was brilliant at it, but without this other thing. So, and I think people forget that. And I kind of am of the, and I love Apple. But I always feel like if I hear one more time, innovate like Steve Jobs, part of me wants to say, no.
Yeah.
Jobs created a yes mentality and I think that, no disrespect to what Apple is, I use their products. I got my iPhone here, and I'm an Apple fan. I'm an Apple fangirl, but I think from a culture standpoint, it is very risky when you build around one person, and that becomes. I don't know that you could build that kind of company today and have it stand. I'm not sure, because the dynamics of a global environment things are fluid, and you need a team around you to be able to jump and real time. And if you do not allow people to do that, and it's very much based on one person, you've done a tremendous disservice to your company, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even if you see that maybe a little bit in Apple is to say they am I echoing, or is that just in my head?
I'm not hearing it, but
just in my head. It's gone now. It's okay.
Maybe it's because what you're about to say is so profound, Mike, that there's like the clouds have parted. Oh.
Yes. Talk about divergent thinking.
Share your wisdom, Macanino.
There's something to be said for the fact that, like, okay, so the if you look at the period when the iPhone came out all the way to like 2010 or so, like there was a lot of development there. And now it's mostly just been iteration at Apple. I mean, like, great, I've got the red iPhone now, but it's really just the same iPhone, it's just red. And so I think that there's something to be said for like, when there's that vacuum pull of taking that rock star founder person out, that's like a vacuum for the organization. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I also think that because it's so easy to, there's so many big brands that can develop, right? So if I'm Snapchat and now Facebook is launching all these things, it's like, well, if all we were good at was doing filters that disappear, then you're in trouble if you can't figure out what to do next. And that comes from yes and thinking. That comes from having a culture of people who are like, ooh, you know what we could do? And then you saying, that's a great idea. You know what else we could do? We could do this on top, and then this on top, and that on top. And if you can't do that, then you're in trouble in this environment. If it was really just some founder had to go away to the ashram for a month and come up with a new idea, that's too slow. That's too slow.
Yeah, no, it's too slow. And it makes me laugh when I watch like HBO's Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of truth there. And it's funny, and I laugh my ass off because the truths there are very, they're big, right? Comedy is nothing. It's nothing if not the truth on steroids.
Yeah.
But I would never work for Piper, because there are egos fighting, battling, and that's the hard part. I think people misunderstand. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, it's about being funny," and it's like, well, here's the thing about improv. Improv will never feel right to you if you will never advance and grow in improv. And I think in culture too, if you aren't able to know when to lead and when to follow. And you and I know that dance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. And it's, you have to be adaptable. You can't always lead. It's not always your idea that everybody coalesces around. And part of the yes and dance is knowing when somebody else's idea has merit and has steam and has sustainability, and you have to jump onto that and yes and that idea for the good of the company. And it's very much, this is where I think big egos struggle. And I say this with culture too. It is not for people who cannot put their ego aside, but if they can learn to be, if they're willing to do the dance, these improv concepts can help people be better, to learn how to master their ego and know when to lead and when to follow. But it is a delicate dance, as you and I both know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's something interesting. I think y'all, Amy Poehler was doing an interview, and she said that at some point you get to figure out what your capital is in life, right? Am I going to use the fact that I'm pretty? Am I going to use the fact that I have big hair? Am I going to be smart? Am I going to be the idea guy? Am I going to be the pusher? And I think one of the gifts for me that just tied so lovely into improv, and I think probably for you, is that I decided that my capital was going to be relationships. Yeah. And so I think that's a key for building a great culture, is saying I care more about the relationship than I do about being right or having the best idea.
Yes.
And I think you become very popular if you're that person who says, hey, I don't know that Mike always has the best idea, but he's always in the room when the best idea happens. That's a powerful place to play from, I think.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And one of the things that sort of, I started out in stand-up, and I think people, my improv friends forget that, which I take as a compliment. I started out in stand-up, and one of the things that I had to learn was to get out of my head and very much be in relationship. Because here's the thing about improv, which I think really suits and maps nicely to culture as we're talking about it. To your point, it's yes and is not it's not a linear thing. It's you're constantly adapting and being in relationship to this other person. So I'm constantly yes anding whatever they say, and they might go in different. My job is to clear my mind with everything and be in relationship. So you're right. What I had to over, person that will yes and the good of an idea if it's going to suit the scene, if it's going to be the right thing for a team, the right thing for a company, and recognizing when to realize that your ego and your idea, that's not the right thing for the. And you're right. I found it's a relationship, and culture is all about being in relationship with other people. And and you said something that I say all the time, and I got this from my mom. Is she used to say, "Hey mom, hey mom." What she used to always say to me was, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be in relationship, Kathy? What do you want?" And I made this a long time ago that, look, sometimes I have good ideas. Sometimes my idea is not the best idea in the room. However, if I can contribute, it makes another idea successful. So that's a win for me to be in relationship with other people. So you're right. And that's, I think, is can I be in relationship constantly to other people?
It's so great. And can I be intentional with it? Because it's also that idea of like, you're always in relationship. It just might not be a healthy one. So being intentional about the relationship you do want to have with other people, I think is that's so rich. That's so rich. Because again, what Kathy was talking about is a lot of times as improvisers, we'll have someone come in who's done stand-up and we immediately are like, I hate you. Because all you're going to do is you're going to ruin the thing we have going on. You're going to ruin the little thing that we're building piece by piece because you're going to go for a one-liner and you're going to ruin everything we've built. And then it's like, well, we have to edit and cut the scene now because that's it. Like you ended it. And so we often don't like stand-up people because they do that. We don't want to play with them because it's like, you're just going to take the joke. You're going to take the easy joke and shit on what we were creating. But I think that happens in meetings. It happens in ideation sessions. It happens in employee conversations where it's like, hey, I'm going to just end this because I can, because I'm the manager, because I can wrap it up, because I can say, just do what I'm telling you to do. And I think the real power comes from saying, how can I influence this group of people towards better decisions and better products and better service?
I love that metaphor because you're right. I think oftentimes I think the idea person or the ego person is really trying to get the one-liner in a improv scene. Every ideation mode with each other and fluidity, continuity in a rhythm. And in the room, and it's like, what do you mean, kids? We don't have any kids. It's like, ba-dum-bum, and then like the continuity of the scene is like totally shit.
Right.
Mike and I both have had that happen to us, and I'm sure in scenes. And I know I'm a stand-up person, and yet it's funny. I think I had an easier time making that transition to a group thing than I think my fellow stand-up comics had.
Yeah.
Yes, but it will ruin, as Mike points out, it will everything that you have built in the scene and the audience. But then there is nowhere to go. You have just crapped on the reality that we've built.
Yeah.
And so, and you have to wipe and all that other stuff. So I think lone, you're either good at being a stand-up person or you're good at improv. It's very hard to do both. You can do it. It's an intentional thing, but you have to know when to be in relationship, a healthy relationship with other people, and give up the stand-up lone mic. And I think that's such a great metaphor for being fluid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because tying it back to like culture, and even what we said at the top of the show is there's this idea that if there's 5 people in a room, one of them might be the creative one. They might have been bitten with the creative bug, or they got the creative spirit inside of them. And the reality is that that's the person who comes in and says, I'm the creative one, so I'll just say something and I'm going to crap on all of your ideas, versus what could have happened if that creative person was actually in relationship with everybody. Something better would have come. And I say this all the time to managers who have a hard time with the idea of like, right, but what if their ideas suck? What if I don't want any of them? And it's like, then don't use them. I'm not saying that because you listen to someone, you have to do what they tell you to do. I'm not saying that sitting down and saying, hey, what could be better about our culture? What could be better about our team? What's a cool way that we could evolve this product? Let's come up with ideas, that you then have to do everything that came out of that ideation session. You're still the manager. You still need to be the manager. You still need to make the decision. But that doesn't mean you can't use the group genius and see if you can't do something better than what you would have done on your own. But this idea that if I listen to you, it means I have to give up control is so backwards. It's not the way it works.
Well, I love you, Mike. Now I love you more if it's possible. Is it possible to love you more? I don't think so. But it's like, I'm so with you. It's like, and I've preached Church of Truth right there. Oh, the clouds have parted, like wisdom. What's the opposite of smiting? Like whatever that would be, that's what it would be. It would be like lifting Mike up out of his chair with a
oh my gosh.
The halo. No, and I agree. And it's funny because in the book, and Stop Boring Me, I wrote this in one of the chapters. And because I get the same thing, everyone's like, well, what if it's a crap-tastic idea? Look, yes and does not mean we're writing a check to build that shit out. You don't have to build that stuff. It just means I hear you. And you don't want to close the spigot of good ideas. So telling people, yes and, that's a crappy idea. That's not the spirit of yes and, people. And I actually worked with a CTO and an executive of developers. And he's like, we got a problem with this thing. And so the very first time I explained, look, he's like, I think we got it. I think we got it, Kathy. Then his team was like, yes, and I don't think that idea will work. And I'm like, you did not understand the lesson of yes, and. No, technical foul. No.
Well, it's so funny because people always think that the idea of yes and is just saying the actual words. And so I like to separate in that. I like to teach it differently. And when I teach the group of public speakers I work with through Michael Port, the thing I always teach them about improvisation is forget yes and for now. Yes. What I want you to do is accept and contribute.
Yes.
Because that changes it. Because now I can no longer say, yes, and that idea is stupid. It's like, well, I have to accept that you had an idea and I have to contribute something to it. It still means yes and, but I think it's just another way to get people in to say, I don't actually just want you to say, yes, and you're a horrible person. I want you to actually accept what they've said, that it is true, that there's something about it, and then contribute to it. And that's the real goal of yes and, right?
Yes. Well, and Mike, I think you're absolutely right. It's a spirit. Yes, and for people that will listen to this later, yes, and it's not the technical words. Yes, and so I always don't like yes, and don't use them. tell me more. I like that idea, or that's interesting because all fits within the principle of what you're trying to do, which is to add and build together. And if yes and gets in your way, then don't use those words. Just don't. Because yes and is really a philosophy, and I'm not hung up on the literalism of yes and, but technical people are technical that we love very, very much. Sometimes the left brain folks get very hung up on the literal.
Yeah.
So if yes and of the spirit of yes and, I'm a big believer. Who gives a crap? Don't use yes and. Tell me more. Oh, that's interesting. And whatever words that allow you to do what you need to do to build, use those words. Just use those words, and get ahead words that sometimes. So
yeah,
it's in your way, don't use it, is the deal. My God, we've talked about a ton of stuff, and I feel like I could have another hour long with you.
Seriously.
We could do this again.
We got to do it again.
We totally got to do it again because Mike, you're fun to talk to. And we will have this up on the site, and I'll package it up and I'll make it pretty to YouTube, and we'll get it out there and tag you. Mike, how do you want, where can they follow you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find everywhere. Just Mike Ganino is everywhere you could go. You can also go, if you just want a easy way to get in touch with me, if you just go to mike.tips, T-I-P-S, mike.tips, you could go there and I'll send you a quick little guide of some ways to get started with building a better team, building a better culture. And then from there, we'll stay in touch with each other. But Mike Ganino on all the socials, every social, you can find me there. If you can't spell Ganino, then just go to mike.tips, and then we'll find each other there. And we'll make improv love together.
We'll make improv love. Boy, you had me at yes and.
That should be a book. We should co-write a book on dating called "You Had Me at Yes and."
Well, let's do it. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. You and me, you just make me laugh, and I love talking to you. And I thought about this. I'm going to close with this. And you can find me at I'm not as clever as Mike. I don't have Kathy.tips. Mike.tips is genius. You can find me at keepingithuman.com. I'm at Kathy Klotz-Guest, no hyphen, on the Twitter. All that good stuff. And you can find my Instagram account and all that good stuff at keepingithuman.com. I thought about this because I love, again, I'm like singing. And even if it's just to please myself, because I'm goofy like that. And I thought, well, what rhymes with Ganino? And neutrino came to mind. And I was like, well, that's something.
I'm into it.
Neutrino. I don't know. Are you only if you're willing and able? Would you yes and me, and maybe we sing a stanza? Maybe we sing something about. Yeah. Okay. So the show is Yes and Brand. Hint: it's going to be the title of my next book. Yes and Brand.
Ooh, I love it. By the way.
And by the way, I'm going to hit you up for a chapter or whatever you want to write. So whatever. So let's do it. Let's maybe sing a song. It's Friday. So let's end with something from spirit. So should I start singing and maybe a line at a time? We'll do a 2 and a 4 or whatever. I don't know.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what unfolds. Watch what happens.
Okay. Let's just watch. What's the worst that could happen? We're improvisers. All right. So how about something like, today is Friday.
And don't let it get in your way.
Get all the tips you can stand.
Even if you're a yes and brand.
Go to Mike Ganino.
He will teach you about neutrino.
Yeah! Woo! I was thinking, I love it. And I totally put him on the spot, but he's an improviser. He went with it. Culture neutrino. I kind of think that's kind of. It's going
to be my new line of nutrition bars for building a better culture.
I think it is. It's like, go to Mike Ganino. He's going to help you with your culture neutrino.
Yeah.
He's the man. I could go on, but
I love it. That's going to be my chapter for you in the Yes and Brand book.
Oh I love it. I would be honored. I would be suing you a chapter, it would be so much fun.
I think
I love talking to improvisers. I love talking to Mike. He's smart and fun, as you can see. Talking to a fellow improviser that also knows business. And that's really what I hope this is fun for people to watch, because improv isn't about being funny. It's about collaboration, and improvisers know something really valuable about give and take in an organic way. That when people think of improv, I hope they don't just think, oh, and make people laugh. I hope what they'll take away from this, wow, improvisers know something about how to organically something real time by collaborating. And they have, so could improv help our organization? And yeah, yes and.
I love it. Oh, so good.
My friend, we'll get this up and I'll pretty it up and also put it on YouTube and get that out there. Mike, it's been fun.
So much fun. Thanks for having me. This was a blast. I'm a Yes and brand for life.
You're a lifer. I've sucked him in. He's sucked in fun.
You cannot get rid of me, girl.
Can't. No, it's true. We're gonna Mike and I clearly have to make some yes and love, and we're just gonna we need some private space for that. So, all right, everybody, have a wonderful, fantastic Friday. We'll see you next week on the Yes and Brand Show. Bye.
Bye.